We've got Rajiv Chandrashekhar joining us on the phone line for his take on really what the Supreme Court verdict a little earlier in the day. Rajiv, how would you first react to what the Supreme Court put out a short while ago?
No, I think it's a landmark judgment. For those who have not been following this as I have, most of the facts of this scam were known in the public domain by put out there by a few journalists like Shalini Singh of the Times of India and so on for many months before January 2008. And the fact that the Supreme Court has actually cancelled these licenses on specific grounds of illegalities in the TRAI Act is actually an extremely positive thing, because it basically establishes the fact that the rule of law and the TRAI Act has to be followed in whatever is done in terms of licensing. So while there is a background discussion of corruption and all of that, I think the main point here that we must not miss is the fact that the Supreme Court has detected violations in law and have caused these licenses to be cancelled because these licenses were deemed to be illegally issued.
Sure, Mr. Chandrasekhar, but there's also another way of looking at it, that the Supreme Court ruling would be a major setback when it comes to FDI in the telecom space and would be a huge blow to the investment process. Banks will be affected, business sentiment will be affected. Are you worried about that at all?
No, not at all. I think that's absolutely wrong, because, if you send out to the investors of the world a signal that there are a set of rules and the companies that follow those rules and will do well and have face no risk in this market, they will continue to attract investments. Look, remember one thing, nothing has changed about the Indian telecom sector. The market potential remains the same, the scale, scope and size of the growth remains the same. This is really an aberration where 122 licenses were issued in violation of law, and no argument of FDI or investor sentiment can be used to counter that argument of illegality. Illegalities are illegalities, whether they affect A or B or C.
Sure, but Rajiv, you can look at it a little differently and argue that really the government is here at fault because these companies followed existing procedures and bid for these licenses. Now you can argue that they underpaid for it or whatever. The fact is that they were granted these licenses. Today they're having to pay the price, and more importantly, their customers are having to pay the price of a procedure that is now being made out to be faulty. So who punishes the government? You're punishing the companies over here, but who punishes the government?
No, let me take this to, there are two things that you're missing here. One is that this is not a procedural issue that is causing these licenses to be cancelled. The procedure that the Department of Telecom followed was in violation of the TRAI Act, which has never been before or after. So this is not a normal procedural issue that, and so the smart companies would have detected and would have understood that these licenses are being issued in violation of TRAI Act. Okay, be that as it may, there is a legitimate argument here that can be made for the investors that have been punished, if that they have in a sense not been party to or being collusive in this violation of law. I'm sure that somebody should go to court and say, look, excuse me, I am at a disadvantage because the government issued these licenses. I accepted these licenses in good faith. But the hurdle that they'll have to cross is they'll have to convince themselves that they were not in any way collusive in this violation, these licenses being issued in violation of law.
All right, Rajiv, many thanks for coming in on the show and giving us your perspective really on the Supreme Court judgment that we had a short while ago.